I always thought love stories were for young people. Those movie scenes, with couples running in the rain, passionate declarations and racing hearts, it all seemed to belong to a distant time in my life. At 80, I had become accustomed to the idea that romantic love was something I simply wouldn't experience. But how wrong I was. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I was born in 1945, shortly after the end of World War II, in a small town in rural Ohio. I grew up in an America that was rebuilding itself, full of hope and dreams. My youth was marked by the golden years of the 1950s and the Cultural Revolution of the 1960s, but while the world around me was changing rapidly, my personal life followed a fairly traditional path. I married Harold when I was 22. He was a good, hard-working man I met at church. It wasn't a marriage of overwhelming passion, but one of companionship and mutual respect. Harold worked as an accountant at a local firm, and I dedicated myself to being a good wife and later mother to our 3 children, Thomas, Rebecca, and Michael. Our life was comfortable, predictable, and, by the standards of the time, very successful. For 54 years, we built a life together. We had our ups and downs, like any couple, but there were never any major dramas or turbulent passions. Harold was a man of few words, preferring to demonstrate his affection through practical actions, fixing things around the house, making sure we always had what we needed, meticulously planning our retirement. I, in turn, took care of the home, raised the children, and actively participated in the local community. When Harold passed away in 2019 at the age of 76, a victim of a sudden heart attack, I felt as if a part of me had gone with him. It wasn't the agonizing pain of romance novels, but rather a profound sense of loss and emptiness. We had been together for so long that I barely knew who Maggie was without Harold by my side. The first few months were the hardest. The house seemed too big, too quiet. My children, all now adults with their own families, were wonderful during this time. Thomas, who lives in Denver with his wife and 2 teenagers, called every week. Rebecca, the middle child, who has always been the most practical, organized my finances and helped me with the endless paperwork that comes after a death. Michael, the youngest, who lives just 30 minutes away in Columbus, visited regularly, sometimes bringing his grandchildren to brighten my days. But as much as I loved my children and grandchildren, something was missing. In the first 2 years after Harold's death, I established a comfortable routine. I would wake up early, have my coffee while watching the morning news, tend to the small garden in the back of the house, have lunch, take a nap, read a little, and watch television in the evening. Twice a week, I went to the senior center, where I played bingo and participated in a book club. It was a quiet, safe life, and, if I'm honest with myself, quite monotonous. It was Rebecca who first suggested I try that internet dating thing. I remember laughing at the idea. Me, at 78 years old at the time, using a dating app? It seemed absolutely ridiculous. But Rebecca is persistent, just like I was at her age, and she didn't give up easily. "Mom, I'm not saying you should replace Dad," she explained patiently during one of her visits. "But you're alive, healthy, and you still have so much to offer. Why not meet new people? It doesn't even have to be romantic. It can just be friendship." The truth is, I was scared. Scared of being judged. What would the people at church say? Scared of somehow betraying Harold's memory. Scared of being vulnerable again. And, perhaps the biggest fear of all, scared of discovering it was too late for me, that I had missed my chance to experience that kind of love I'd always seen in movies. But something inside me began to change. Perhaps it was the loneliness of the long, winter nights. Perhaps it was the fact that, upon turning 79, I began to wonder how many years I had left and if I really wanted to spend them alone, just waiting for my children's weekly visits. Or perhaps it was simply the right time. In the spring of 2024, a few months before turning 80, I finally gave in. Rebecca helped me create a profile on a dating site specifically for people over 60. We chose a photo of me taken on my 50th wedding anniversary. I was smiling, wearing a light blue dress Rebecca had given me, and I looked, well, like myself. No trying to look younger or different. In the About Me section, I honestly wrote, 79-year-old widow, mother of 3 wonderful children, and proud grandmother of 6 grandchildren. I love gardening, reading, and a good cup of coffee. I'm looking for companionship for pleasant conversations, walks, and perhaps a second chance at love. I believe it's never too late for new beginnings. The first few days were discouraging. I received a few messages, but most were from men who were clearly sending the same generic message to dozens of women. Some were inappropriate, and I quickly learned to block them and move on. I started to wonder if Rebecca hadn't made a mistake in encouraging me. And then, on a typical Tuesday in April, I received a message from Arthur. "Hello, Maggie," the message began. "Your profile made me smile, especially the part about the cup of coffee. I'm Arthur, 82 years old, also a widower. My wife Eleanor passed away 3 years ago, and I'm finally ready to meet someone new. Like you, I also have children, 2 daughters, and grandchildren. I spent my career as a history teacher at a high school here in Columbus. I love American history, light walks, and coincidentally, also a good cup of coffee. If you're interested, I'd love to chat more. No pressure, just a conversation between 2 survivors of this crazy life." There was something different about Arthur's message. It was personal, kind, and even a little funny. I replied the same day, and that's how our correspondence began. For 2 weeks, we exchanged daily messages. He told me about his life as a teacher, about how he loved teaching young people about the Civil War and the Great Depression, bringing history to life through personal stories. He spoke about Eleanor, without shame or embarrassment, and how difficult it had been to lose his partner of 58 years. I, for my part, told him about Harold, about our children, about how I discovered too late that I enjoyed writing short stories about my rose garden, which was my pride and joy. We discovered that we lived only 45 minutes from each other. He in a retirement community in Columbus, I still in the house where I raised my children. When Arthur finally suggested we meet in person, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. She was as nervous as a teenager before the school dance. What would I wear? What would it be like to see him in person? What if the chemistry we felt through messages didn't translate to real life? We arranged to meet at a cafe in downtown Columbus, neutral territory for both of us. I chose a simple yet elegant lavender dress. Rebecca always said that color highlighted my blue eyes. I applied a little makeup, something I rarely did lately, and grabbed my purse with trembling hands. The cafe was cozy, with wooden tables and a wonderful aroma of fresh coffee and homemade cakes. I arrived 5 minutes early, as I always did, and chose a table near the window. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the cafe could hear it. And then I saw him come in. Arthur was taller than I had imagined, about 180, with completely white, neatly combed hair. He wore gold-framed glasses, a light blue shirt, and khaki pants. His face lit up when he saw me, and he walked to my desk with a warm smile. "Maggie?" he asked, extending his hand. His voice was deep and gentle, exactly as I had imagined. "I'm Arthur. It's a pleasure to meet you in person." I shook his hand and felt a spark, not just metaphorical, but a real, palpable connection. "The pleasure is mine, Arthur. Please, have a seat." The first 2 hours passed like minutes. We talked about everything: our children, our past lives, our hopes for the future. Arthur had a way of telling stories that kept me completely absorbed. He spoke about his students with such affection, about how some still sought him out years after graduating, about how education had been his lifelong passion. I told him about my years volunteering at the local library, about how I loved seeing children discover a love for books. We talked about music, We discovered a shared love for Frank Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald. We laughed about the technological changes we've witnessed throughout our lives, from the first televisions to the smartphones our grandchildren consider indispensable. But what surprised me most was how easy it was to be with him. There was no pressure, no judgment. When I mentioned Harold, Arthur listened with genuine respect. When he spoke about Eleanor, I felt no jealousy, only compassion for his loss and admiration for how much he had clearly loved her. At the end of that first meeting, when Arthur walked me to my car, he hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Maggie, I don't want to sound too direct, but I must say this was the most pleasant afternoon I've had in a long time. I would very much like to see you again, if you are interested." She smiled, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. "I'd love that too, Arthur." Our second meeting was a week later, a walk through the local park. It was a beautiful spring morning, with flowers blooming everywhere. We walked slowly, talking and enjoying nature. Arthur took my hand at one point, and I didn't feel a hint of guilt or awkwardness. I just felt it was right. In the following weeks, we met regularly. We went to museums, had quiet dinners, and attended concerts in the park. Arthur took me to an exhibit about the history of Ohio, and I took him to a botanical garden I loved. Each encounter deepened our connection. But it wasn't all easy. When I finally told my children about Arthur, the reactions were mixed. Thomas, always the most pragmatic, was happy for me. "Mom, you deserve to be happy," he said simply. Michael was also encouraging, although a little protective, wanting to make sure Arthur was a good guy. Rebecca, however, had a difficult time. She had been so close to her father, and seeing her mother with another man upset her. We had a difficult conversation where she expressed her concerns and even a little resentment. It was painful, but necessary. "Rebecca, darling," I said, holding her hands, "no one will ever replace your father. Harold was the love of my youth, the father of my children, my companion for over half a century. But he's gone, and I'm still here. Arthur isn't erasing your father's memory. He's giving me the chance to fully live the years I have left. Isn't that what your father would have wanted for me?" It took time, but Rebecca eventually accepted. Meeting Arthur in person helped. It was impossible not to like him. He was kind, respectful, and clearly made me happy. The real turning point came on my 80th birthday in August 2024. My children organized a surprise party, and to my joy and nervousness, they invited Arthur. Seeing my children, grandchildren, lifelong friends, and Arthur all together was surreal and wonderful. Arthur gave me a gift that made me cry, a beautiful leather-bound journal with my name engraved on it. "You mentioned you like writing stories," he said softly. "I thought I could use this to write our story too." That night, lying in bed, I thought about how my life had changed in just a few months. I had taken a risk. I had faced my fears, overcome the judgment of others and myself, and opened my heart again. And what I found was more than I expected. Arthur and I aren't like other young couples. We don't spend sleepless nights talking or make grand plans for the future. But what we have is special in a different way. It's the comfort of having someone who completely understands this phase of life. It's the joy of sharing a cup of coffee in the morning, discussing the day's news. It's having a hand to hold during a movie, someone to laugh with, someone who makes me want to get dressed up and leave the house. I discovered that love at 80 is different from love at 20 or 40. It's calmer, deeper, based not on burning passion but on genuine companionship and mutual respect. It's about appreciating each moment because we know, better than anyone, how precious time is. A few months after my birthday, Arthur and I had a serious conversation about the future. Neither of us wanted to get married again. We both felt that marriage belonged to our deceased spouses. But we wanted to formalize our commitment in some way. We decided that I would spend some days of the week at his apartment, and he would spend some days at my house. That way, we maintained our independence, but also had each other's company. Our children adjusted to the idea, especially when they saw how much more cheerful and alive we both were. One of the most beautiful things about my relationship with Arthur is that he made me rediscover parts of myself that I had forgotten. With Harold, I was always the wife, the mother, the caregiver. With Arthur, I could simply be Maggie, a woman with her own opinions, dreams, and desires. Arthur encouraged me to start writing again, something I had abandoned decades ago. I began writing short stories about my life, my experiences, the lessons I had learned. He was my first and most enthusiastic reader. I, in turn, encouraged him to finally write the book on local history that he had always wanted to do. We spent hours researching together, visiting historical archives and libraries. It was as if we had found not only romantic companions, but also intellectual partners. Now, a year after our first meeting, I can say with certainty that risking everything at 80 was the best decision I ever made. Everything may sound dramatic, but that's how I felt. I was risking my comfort zone, the memory of my late husband, the approval of my children, what people would think. I learned that it's never too late for love. I learned that the heart doesn't have an expiration date. I learned that it's possible to honor the past while embracing the future. Harold will always have a special place in my heart. He's the father of my children, the man with whom I built a life. But Arthur is my present and my future, for as long as we have. Life at 80 with Arthur by my side is rich and full. We wake up slowly without rushing. We have our coffee watching the birds in the garden. We take short walks, always hand in hand. We cook together. Arthur makes an incredible carrot cake, and I make the best stew he's ever tasted, according to him. We watch historical documentaries, amicably disagreeing on interpretations of events. We read to each other before bed. But most importantly, we laughed. We laughed a lot. At our little memory lapses, at how technology confuses us, at old stories, at bad jokes. Laughter, I discovered, is the glue that holds everything together at this stage of life. My grandchildren adore Arthur, especially because he tells fascinating stories about the old days and always has time to listen to them. Arthur's daughters welcomed me into their lives with genuine affection. Our birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings are now bigger and more joyful events, with our two families blending harmoniously. There are challenges, of course. We both have occasional health issues. Arthur's arthritis, my high blood pressure. There are days when we're too tired to do much. There are moments of frustration when our bodies don't cooperate with what our minds want to do. But we face it all together, and that makes all the difference. Sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night next to Arthur or in my own bed, I think about how different my life could have been if I hadn't taken the risk. I might still be living my days in a lonely routine, waiting for my children's visits, counting the days without any expectation of joy or surprise. Instead, I wake up each day with something to look forward to. A conversation with Arthur about the interesting article he read. A stroll to our favorite cafe. A new gardening project we wanted to try together. Plans for a short trip, something simple, like visiting a nearby historic town or spending a weekend at one of his children's country houses. Society often forgets that older people still have hearts that feel, dreams to dream, and love to give. There's an assumption that, after a certain age, we should simply accept loneliness as a natural part of life. But why? Why should love have an age limit? I want my story to inspire other people my age or older to take risks. 2. If you're alone and thinking it's too late, let me tell you, it's not. You deserve companionship, laughter, hands to hold, and someone who cares. You deserve to wake up with something to look forward to besides your next doctor's appointment or a visit from your grandchildren. Yes, it's frightening. Yes, you may face judgment. Yes, you may feel guilty for moving on if, like me, you've lost a spouse. But is the alternative, living your final years in solitude, refusing to open your heart, again, really better? For me, meeting Arthur at 79 was like getting a second chance at life. It's not about replacing what I had with Harold. It's about recognizing that I have enough love in my heart to honor my past and celebrate my present. Arthur often says that Eleanor would have liked me, and I believe that Harold would have liked Arthur. Our deceased spouses loved us and would have wanted us to be happy. This realization freed me from much of the guilt I initially felt. Now, at 80 years old, I feel more alive than I have in decades. I have plans, dreams, and above all, I have love. Arthur and I know that time is precious and limited. We don't know how many years, months, or even days we have ahead of us, but we've decided that, however long it is, we're going to live it fully, together. Every afternoon, when we sit on our favorite park bench, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, Arthur squeezes my hand and whispers, "Thank you for taking the risk, Maggie." And I always reply, "Thank you for making the risk worthwhile." Because that's what I did at 80. I took a risk. I risked my pride, my comfort, my preconceived notions about love and age. And what I found was more precious than anything I could have imagined. The love I had waited for all my life. Not the dramatic and tumultuous love of novels. Not the practical and comfortable love I had with Harold. But a third kind of love, mature, profound, aware of its own mortality, and for that very reason, even more precious. A love that knows how to appreciate every moment, every conversation, every touch of a hand, because it knows that nothing is guaranteed and everything is a gift. If my story has taught me anything, it's that it's never too late to take a chance. It's never too late to open your heart. It's never too late to find the love you've been waiting for. You just need to have the courage to take the first step. So, if you're reading this and wondering if you should take a chance too, whether it's in love, a new hobby, a friendship, anything that makes your heart beat a little faster, my answer is yes, take the risk. Because life, even at 80, 90, or 100, is too short to live in fear. And the regret of not having tried is much heavier than the fear of failure. I risked everything at 80 and found not only the love I had waited for all my life, but also a version of myself I didn't even know existed. A brave, passionate Maggie, ready to live each day to the fullest. And that, more than anything else, was the greatest gift of all. Today, as I write these final words in my diary, that lovely gift from Arthur, I look out the window and see him in the garden, tending to my roses with as much love as I always have. He just turned 83, and I'm about to turn 81. We don't know how much time we'll have together, but I know that each day is a blessing. Last week, we went to Arthur's grandson's wedding. Seeing that young couple exchanging vows made me think about all the forms love can take throughout a lifetime. Their youthful and passionate love, the mature and companionable love I had with Harold. And now, this autumnal love with Arthur, perhaps the sweetest of all, because it was freely chosen, without obligations, without social expectations, just two hearts deciding there was still time for one more chapter. Arthur is calling me now. It's time for our afternoon stroll in the park, followed by our sacred ritual of coffee and cake. And as I close this journal, my heart is full of gratitude, full of love, full of life. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from my story, it's this. Life doesn't end at 60, 70, 80, or beyond. As long as there's a beating heart, there's time for new beginnings. Don't let fear, other people's opinions, or age steal your chance at happiness. Because in the end, it's not the length of life that matters, but the depth with which we live it. And I, Maggie, at 80 years old, have finally learned to live deeply. And you, which city are you watching this video from? Share in the comments. If Maggie's story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories of real people who prove it's never too late to start over. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any stories.